Hello, welcome to PCAP's fifth Prairie's Got the Goods week. My name is Caitlin Mroz-Sailer, and I am the Stewardship Coordinator with Saskatchewan Prairie Conservation Action Plan, or PCAP. Our presenter today is Vice Chief Heather Bear from the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations. I'd like to start by stating we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations and communities, past and present. For millennia, they have worked to protect these landscapes and the life these areas sustain. I would like to thank these original caretakers and acknowledge the ongoing work and presence of Indigenous peoples in Canada today. I would like to note that this presentation is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the PCAP YouTube channel in the near future. As part of Prairie's Got the Goods week, there are 3 more webinars taking place this week. Topics include pollination, cattle, and greenhouse gases. For more information about these webinars or to register, please visit the PCAP website. Just click on upcoming events and then Prairie's Got the Goods week. Prairie's Got the Goods week would not be possible without our sponsors. I would like to sincerely thank our presenting sponsors, Sask Energy and Wildlife Habitat Canada, as well as our supporting sponsors, Eco-Friendly Sask and Saskatchewan Cattlemen's Association. A reminder to all of our listeners out there, you'll be muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type it into the questions section of the webinar dashboard at any time during the presentation. If you are on a cell phone, you can send your question by chat to the organizer. Questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. Now, a bit about today's presenter. Fourth Vice Chief Heather Bear is a member of the Ochapowace First Nation in Saskatchewan. Prior to being elected to the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations as 4th Vice Chief, Heather had served as a council member of the Ochapowace First Nation for 6 years. During her term of office, Heather has worked collectively for the betterment and advancement for all First Nations in the area of treaty implementation, prioritized education as a treaty right and the foundation for schools, ensured the development of First Nations youth to become the future leaders, and continues the commitment to improving the life situations of First Nations people. With that, I'm pleased to turn it over to Vice Chief Heather Bear.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge our creator on behalf of all of us today, and I want to thank the Saskatchewan Prairie Conservation Action Plan participants for inviting me to this to be a participant, a panelist in this webinar. The FSIN, Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, we have been in motion protecting inherent and treaty rights since 1946. So we have a long history, 75 years, asserting our sovereignty, our jurisdiction, our autonomy over our people and our land. So I just wanted to acknowledge the picture there with myself holding my headdress, and I think this is a nice segue when we talk about protocols. I carry my headdress in honor of our first lawmaker, and traditionally our laws come from the woman. And as I moved through my life, I've come to understand that it even goes deeper than that, to honor our first mother, our Mother Earth. So and that's a relationship that we have. So with that, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve protecting the people and the land in the capacity of inherent rights and, of course, treaty. The FSIN represents 74 First Nations in Saskatchewan, and we are committed to honoring the spirit and intent of treaty. We, as well as promotion and protection and the implementation of the treaty promises that were made a century ago, over a century ago. I just want to say that my knowledge and understanding of treaty and inherent rights comes from the oral tradition. My grandparents, Marlo Kanewashkwaham, my grandmother, Margaret Bear, they were my teachers, and I want to acknowledge, their teachings because I think it's important to understand that as we gain knowledge, we have a philosophy. Education is lifelong learning. Our world is our curriculum, and we are all teachers. So within our Treaty First Nations, our sovereign nations in Saskatchewan, we have 10 tribal councils of various sizes and 10 independent First Nations who are not affiliated with First Nations. So when we talk about First Nations' inherent right to self-determination, uh, I want to explain what our inherent rights are, first of all, so you understand. Those are the rights that have been bestowed upon the Indigenous people of Canada. Uh, they've been bestowed by the Creator. So, with those rights are laws, and as we look to the roles, the First Nations perspective, and the role, the woman's role in terms of protecting in the land, and of course is something of importance when we talk about our prairies, the wetlands, and the birds, and the vegetation, the animals, everything inclusive. So when we talk about that inherent right to self-determination, we talk about jurisdiction. We talk about jurisdiction over the lands and the territories. Now, in treaty, we had never agreed to cede any land. We agreed to share the land. And I think that comes from a First Nations perspective. We were told long ago, how can you own your mother? And, we take care of her. We take care of the earth. And in return, she takes care of you. So, we continue as First Nations to assert that jurisdiction because I think it's very critical that First Nations people are inclusive in every aspect when we talk about uh, you know the laws and what's going on our lands, to be able to consult and also have consent, because we have traditional territories. It's not just the reserves that we occupy. We agreed in treaty that we'd be able to hunt, fish, and gather, and that's a very important part of our culture, our way of life, and our food sovereignty, our medicines, and this is and we govern ourselves, through being good caretakers. So that is a political perspective in terms of First Nations, our inherent right to self-determination, and that being our livelihood, doing business. We have that inherent right because we've always been here. So when we talk about First Nations prairie ecosystems and wetlands, just again, always been here from time immemorial. The land and cultural keystone species such as the bison, the buffalo, which I grew up calling it the buffalo, provided everything we needed. And when we talk about our sustenance, traditionally that was our sustenance, that was our shelter, that was our tools, and that was a big part of our ceremonies. So, with that extermination, we were forcibly removed from the prairies during the process of colonizations. And let's just say, and I just want to say, has been a dark past, and I think this is a good time just to maybe let you all know that our First Nations were very effective and successful farmers. Shortly after treaty, it was known that with the extermination of practically no buffalo or bison, there would be a change of life, a change in terms of um, doing things differently. So farming, of course, being on the prairies was what our people set off to do. And I can speak from the oral tradition of Ochapowace. I know that there was letters that were uh, found in the archives in Ottawa, but we were so successful. Those grain bins were full, and there was actual letters sent to MLAs stating that they we're trying to colonize, but the Indians are ahead. The grain bins are full. So that's when they implemented the pass system, where the Indian agent regulated what went on and off reserve. So um, sadly, the innovation that was supposed to happen turned out uh, going the other way, and they went back to using the old sickle. So a lot of unscrupulous and terrible things were done in terms of First Nations, occupying the field in farming and agriculture, and it's just um, you'll hear some claims that are going forward nowadays, but we're trying to reconcile that. But we have a land that has been stolen unscrupulously again, Indian agents, and that's why we have the whether it's TLE or specific claims. So, trying to compensate and get that land back. And we continue to be displaced by the sale of public lands. New legislation, for example, the Trespass to Property Act, and ongoing industrial development on prairies that prevents First Nations access and displaces wildlife. I just want to point to uh, a matter, how our First Nations view the land. First of all of the land is of value. We value all our land. And, there seems to be an attitude, and this colonial thinking, because there's no revenues that come off this First Nations land because it's crown land, like it's devalued, but we value all our land the same. And I think that's an important perspective to bring forward in terms of understanding. Uh, but when we look at, the traditional territories and like I say, proponents and disrupting trap lines and, harvesting, disrupting the harvest, the medicines, and just some of the disrespectful activity that happens. And I just want to say this is why we talk about free, prior, and informed consent, and working together and sharing responsibility and revenue resource sharing. But anyway, I don't want to go off into the forest on that one. But again, let's talk about Pashkawawimustus, bison on the prairies. And there again, I've already said what the bison provided for our people: food, shelter, tools, clothing, warmth, and of course ceremony. Uh, I actually talked about a few things here. Uh, Oh, here's a good point. There's many First Nations who are bringing back the bison to the landscape today, and re-strengthening our culture, traditions, and relationships with the land. So that's something my own First Nation of Ochapowace, we've been raising bison, and I know there's a few others, Kakawishtahow. It's really nice. It's beautiful to see. Um, growing up, we never seen that as children. Um, there was nothing, but to see that coming back, I'm very proud that my grandchildren, can see buffalo, and of course, there are stories that come along with that too. So when we talk about wetlands, I want to first of all, talk about the role of the woman, as life givers. When the water breaks, there's life, and we are the water protectors, and that's when we, what we talk about, what we learn is that the women have a sacred responsibility, to protect the water because we are water carriers, and our relationship with waters is very different than non-Indigenous views on water. Water is sacred. Water is living. It has a spirit and should be respected. On the dry prairies, water and wetlands are critical habitat for wildlife and nature and abundance of life. So without water, nothing can live. And when healthy, wetlands also act to filter and cleanse the water in the landscape. I just want to point out the Saskatchewan River, the Cumberland House Delta. There's a First Nation, sovereign First Nation that lives right on the little island there. And one of the knowledge keepers, Gary Carrier, he's been an advocate for the Delta, the third largest Delta in the world. This is uh, should be Saskatchewan's jewel. Everyone should know this, but there's been a lot of impacts when we talk about in industry, EB Campbell Dam, and of course, lately the conversation has been pointing to the Diefenbaker Lake um, irrigation project. And industry needs to know and understand that you're messing with nature, and the impacts, the long-term impacts are so serious and devastating for the migration of birds, for the medicines. There's just so that delta is so important. There's 10,000 square miles of pristine rivers, and I fished on the delta, big beautiful sturgeon, and the knowledge keepers, if we keep going how we're going, and everything that happens upstream comes downstream, and there's impacts, and if we keep going how we're going, in 50 years that could be just one big river. So we really need to take a serious look at uh, you know uh, what we're doing, from environmental aspect. But this land, hunting, trapping, it's devastated. Industry has devastated trapping. It's devastated, hunting, gathering, and uh, important medicine plants, and that we use for ceremony. So I just wanted to point that out because I think I think there's like millions of birds that come, not I think, I know, that come and migrate, and those are, they're seeing changes within our environment, and it's very worrisome. So anyway, we have migratory birds. Migratory birds, such as ducks and geese, are important species that provide food for our people. I remember long ago, my grandmother would crave for prairie chicken and or duck, and I grew up loving, and I get a craving every now and again, but uh, this was our food, and the wetlands on the prairies are critically important for habitats for birds migrating in the spring and the fall. So with the loss of wetlands, treaty hunters are noticing, and others are noticing, changes in the birds, migration patterns, and the numbers of birds on the landscape. So, these are critical issues because when you look at First Nations in our perspective, we need to our role. When we look at our role in passing down our oral traditions and the way we do things, our culture, uh, you know, whether it be ducks for ceremonial soup or just for sustenance, but there's so much that impact. And what really pains me is I was in up in the Madge Lake area when I think there was about 200 or 300 ducks, just outfitters just coming to kill them and leave them there. And I call that an Indian sin. My grandmother used to call that Indian sin. We don't waste, we respect. We put tobacco down. There's so much reverence that we pay, to the animal, because it has a spirit. Everything has a spirit. So with again, there's a lot of concern there. We're going back to respecting water. First Nations know that the health of the landscape, the waters, and the wildlife are linked with the health of the people. I want to share, I think at this point, I think it's good to share some concern about the chemicals across the prairie landscape and how our rivers and lakes have been poisoned. My parents just lived next door here. My family, we've never had cancer in our family. I've got neighbors down the road, and I think out of about 10 houses, I could probably name 8 people that have had cancer just in this last decade or so. We've never had cancer in our family. But the Copel Valley, the Copel River has been contaminated for years. Raw sewage getting into our watersheds, and when you look at the floods that we had in, I believe it was 2010 when we flooded every year there, it was really devastating. And of course, everything comes down into the valley. But what I've noticed is how cancer has been just evident. Gallstones, kidney stones, and our elders talked about a time of when the water would contaminate us and make us sick. I don't drink the water in my own home, and I want to point to our senator's words, Senator Roland Crow, when on respecting the water. He said, "I remember we used to drink water directly from the rivers and strain the water from the wetlands. The elders would look at the strainer, and if there were no bugs in the water, we knew it wasn't safe for us either. Now no one can drink from the river. The contamination of our water is an absolute disaster." Now I remember back in the day growing up, my grandparents had a well. I remember going, and pumping water out of the well, and I remember the dipper and how fresh and clean. I still remember that. And I want to point to South and Big Deep Bay. I was out fishing in the community, spending time on the land, a very safe place to be at a time of COVID. And just another elders, when we were advised long ago, they said someday, a great sickness will come upon our people and we'll have to go back to the land. And I remember Deep Bay drinking out of a dipper right out of the lake. And I don't ever recall doing that since I was a kid. And I'm glad to say that there still is beautiful, clean, healthy water, not just clean water, but healthy water among us, and it's so important that we are aware. And I know you wouldn't come to my lake over here, Round Lake, and drink out of that lake. You just wouldn't. It's a mess. So, and there again, Quavita set off to reconcile some of that damage, but Ochapowace, we haven't settled a Quavita claim in terms of the farmland that was drowned out. And Round Lake was never a lake. It was a river, and there was many acres of farmland due to dams and again messing with nature, right? And uh, I would hope that if that day ever comes, that the province would take responsibility and be accountable and clean up the contamination. So I just wanted to uh, you know uh, mention that because we are living in a time of reconciliation, and reconciliation must include the land. Without the land, there is nothing. In the prairies, colonialism has resulted in the loss of around 80% of the ecosystem and up to 90% of prairie wetlands. So we need collective action to reverse this loss. I just want to say that, as First Nations, Indigenous uh, servant, I guess, leader, I work with different ministries, and I think we have more in common than not. And I think it's all mankind. The thing is, we have our knowledge keepers, we have our elders, and it's kind of an inside funny or an inside little joke that you have scientists and biologists, and no disrespect, I respect you, the field of science, but you know, unless it's scientifically proven, um, you know, you can't believe it. But it just pains me that our elders, our knowledge keepers, are not respected, and it is changing. But the validity. Why do we have to fight to validate our elders as to what they're saying is true? My my upbringing was uh, uh, a traditional uh, extended family. My parents raised me, and my grandparents raised me, and they went to residential school. And they didn't go to school for very many years, but I tell you, they were very wise people, and what they talked about when I was a little girl is happening today. So I validate that, and I think um, more uh, can be understood if one took the time to seek out, the elders in the traditional territories, and learn about these perspectives, because really it's about respect. It's about uh doing what's right. It's nature. The creator put everything there for a purpose. And I want to say, when I was talking about cancer, the knowledge that my grandparents handed down in terms of what we do, because my grandmother was a medicine gatherer. I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 2 years ago, back in June. And I had to go through extensive 7 weeks of chemo and radiation.
Vice Chief Heather Bear, are you still there? I think we might have lost you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Hello? Okay.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, I just want to kind of end off on this personal journey that I went on, with living in the valley, and of course we drank out of creeks and whatnot, and I really believe my cancer came from the water, but it was seeking out the good water, the healthy water, and the medicines that grew in the Cumberland House Delta. The elders that really saved me from uh, helped me heal. So I actually went to four elders that gave me the same diagnosis and um, the same encouragement in what I needed to do to get better. But I knew in my heart that in my work with lands and resources, I fight for the water, I fight for the land, I fight for the medicines and the animals and the birds, and I know there's a spirit in there, and I knew that that spirit would help me overcome this terrible sickness. So yeah, it was. I think within 4 or 5 months, the cancer was gone. I also use cannabis, which is natural to um, help to eradicate. But God willing, and I think I went through more tests for the doctors to tell me I had no cancer. So. Uh, to me, that's a testimony, the oral tradition, the First Nations perspective, and knowing and understanding how important water is. It really, truly is a medicine. And I think we need to, take on these perspectives in terms of, the good medicine and make sure that we don't destroy that because, it's there for us as we come to learn and understand the protocols. And, I think we have a lot to contribute, in this country, in this region. I know in farming there's alternatives now, and I've actually done some research online, and I'm very I feel more of an air of comfort that the use of better alternatives that are more environmentally friendly, but there are many that are not. So we need to speak, for the land, for the water, our prairies. There not may not be a lot of mountains over here in the south, but or a lot of trees in the south, but I've heard that we have the most beautiful sunrises all over the world. All over the world, they have sunrises, but I think the sun rises the most beautiful on the prairies. So, but yeah, I think that's a lot to be said. I don't know everything. I still have my grime, my spiritual teachers, and it's not about fighting over land. It's about protecting the land, and I think we need to move towards co-stewardship or co-management, and have that inclusion of not only our elders, but when it comes to conservation, we do our best to try and tear down those walls of racism and discrimination. Sadly, they still exist. But I think that's a big barrier, for First Nations having that voice. When there's still the continued oppression and suppression and the hurts and the distrust. We've got to come together to cleanse ourselves from all of that. And it's just like any other relationship. It can't be done with only one party. It has to be both. And just so we know and understand that our treaties, it was a mutual relationship. A sovereign nation and another sovereign nation a treaty cannot be made unless you have two sovereign nations. So, I don't know why there's this paternalistic attitude, and you know, uh, we've been treated like we know nothing as First Nations people. We know a lot, and we can share a lot, and there's elders so willing to do that, not only in our region but all over Canada. And it's not for our people. We do this for all mankind, and for our great Mother Earth. So with that, I think I have 5 minutes to spare. I don't know if there's any questions, but it's been a pleasure, to tell my story, and give voice, for the elders that are out there. Tobacco is the protocol, uh, and different communities have. Like there's a chief and council office, they know who their elders are, tribal councils, if you ever need to reach out. And, when we look at the structure of our governance, we have a portfolio system. Someone's on lands and resources, someone's on housing, education, and so forth. And, yeah, and working with First Nations, our leadership has been one of the most um, uh, the most wonderful experience that I could ever even imagine. I never knew I would go down this path, but I guess Creator figured this would be a role, and I'll be here as long as they need me. So uh, with that, uh, I guess I will come to a conclusion with 4 minutes remaining. Is it Caitlin?
Yes, that's
I
right.
want to thank you and for having me today, and I hope that there was some takeaways from this presentation. Kichime Gwechanaskaman Kinike, Tinike, thank you.
Thank you very much. We really, really appreciate the time that you took to share this presentation with us today. We've had a lot of attendees write in and say that there are some really heavy concepts that you've brought up and worthy of discussion, and provided a lot of information and inspiration for us today. So thank you very much, Vice Chief Bear. We do have a few
Thank
questions
you.
from listeners. Is it okay if I ask them to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. A listener named May is wondering, are you finding that more First Nations children are learning about traditional ways now that it is safer and more acceptable to do so?
Yeah, I think when we talk about reconciliation, of course, the residential school, the calls to action. I think there's been a revitalization, Indian control of Indian education. Elders are the doors are open for elders coming in, and like I say, education is lifelong learning. Our world is our curriculum, and we are all teachers. And there's been so many going out to the land, especially at a time of COVID. So, yes, I think we are living in exciting times, and that's where we're getting the best feeling.
Great, that's really good to hear. One of our listeners is wondering about medicinal plants. Earlier in your presentation, you had mentioned medicinal plants. Would you be able to elaborate about that topic and what type of plants you use and what for what?
Well, actually, there's just thousands of medicines. And that comes through protocol and tobacco. We have our medicine gatherers. Well, we have our spiritual men or our spiritual people, and then we have our medicine gatherers, right? So, a little bit different. Some are both, but the protocol. For example, if I need sage, I'll you do the reverence and offer that tobacco, because of we talked about a spirit there, and that. the instructions come from our knowledge keepers on how to prepare that. And uh, like I say, there's like for me, I knew because my grandmother was a part of that medicine, the medicine people. I might even say a medicine society. Like I did also go down to Arizona, our relatives over the border, and there's medicines and ceremonies to help you heal from any sickness, even for COVID.
Really, that's amazing. Wow.
We had the COVID vaccine uh, in ceremony before anyone even locked down. Uh,
Wow.
so yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yes, yes, it is. A listener named Jessica is wondering if you find it a challenge to get the younger generation interested in learning about the natural world. Oh, are you still there? We might have lost you again. Oh, I think you're muted. There we go.
Hello?
Yes,
Okay,
perfect.
there we go. Can you catch that question?
Yes. Do you find it a challenge to get the younger generation interested in learning about the natural world?
I think in terms of First Nations children, I think it's in the DNA. I mean, the oral tradition is through storytelling. When there's snow on the ground, that traditionally that's the time, that's the law. That's when you tell those stories. So, we sage chuck, a lot of our ways are entrenched in uh, the stories, the tricksters. So you get kids out on the land, whether it's putting up a teepee and chopping wood. I just it's in their DNA. Um and that's why we're going out to the land. Hunting, fishing, canoeing. There's so much happens. I just in my own community here, hunting and looking after the kill. My uh, the last feast we had was my nephew when he shot his first kill. A big feast and the whole family comes together and they celebrate and we share the meat. So there's so much. It's a way of life. It's not just, oh, we're going to do culture today. It's a way of life. So, and I think as young parents, learn, like I say, the natural laws and those practices. And, if they can incorporate it into their good parenting, we're just doing our Indigenous children a world of good.
Absolutely, absolutely. A listener named Melissa Arcand, she's an assistant professor of soil science, says, thanks, Vice Chief Bear, for the great presentation. And can you comment on any initiatives or programs that the FSIN is involved with respect to protecting native prairies and wetlands within First Nations reserves lands? And she mentions that she's doing a lot of work on agricultural lands within First Nations communities through the University of Saskatchewan, and that she's from Muskeg Lake Cree Nation, and she's interested in how our lands can be
Oh,
better
wow.
managed. Yeah. Do you have any comments about
Well, thank you
what
for
the
that.
FSIN is doing to protect prairies and wetlands?
Mhm. Actually, we're doing a lot. We do have the FSIN Lands and Resources Commission. We have just about every type of advocacy, and through the Center of Excellence, we are constantly on alert for any activity in terms of any proponents, coming into different traditional territories. And we're actually working on well, we do have a consultation policy at FSIN. It's a template that other nations can take to draw upon and use, or design it to fit their own. So we have a lot of support in terms of issues that come up. Like for example, the Quill Lake, flooding issues. We have the Cumberland House issues. We have treaty rights protection. We have, a tribunal that grants money to help, fight and protect. And about 80% of our litigation has to do with land, either protecting it or trying to get it back. And like I say, I think FSIN probably most of their, I shouldn't take away from the child file, the social aspect in terms of people, but because I'm in lands and resources, um, we have a very uh, strong team. We have two biologists. We have and a director and an executive director that are really um, in terms of protecting and advocating, hunting, fishing, trapping, you name it, we're doing it. So when any issue that comes to our table is taken seriously. If it's a harassment, a CO, for example, harassing a First Nation, just simply asserting their inherent right to hunt. You know, we have a Justice Department that deals with that as well, with a special investigative unit. So, like I talked about, tearing down, those walls, racism and discrimination. I think we have a lot of work to do there, to fully achieve, um, you know, the maximum talent of both sides, right, in terms of First Nations and non-First Nations. But Melissa, you're welcome to call me anytime, or our secretariat. Um, Geographically, in our region, it's very unique uh, lands and issues. In the far north, it's the Caribou, the Athabasca. We deal with, um, the climate change impacting the wildfires. We have, we had to do advocacy to stamp out the let it burn. They called it, it was coined the let it burn policy, and you know. And it's painful to say. Why do we always have to fight to be a part of what's inherently, our role, and through treaty where we're supposed to share that. So sorry about the long answer, but you get me excited when you say, what can we do and what are we doing? Um, yeah, it's
Absolutely.
either litigation, communications, or policy and changing laws. That's what we do.
And she says, thank you so much for and she'd love to discuss more. So I'll leave it up to her to get in touch. A listener named Clinton says that you spoke of farming practices of the past and the tie to the land. And he's wondering, do you feel more First Nations children and young adults will seek to become farmers or ranchers?
Lately I've been looking at the band farms because I have economic development, and one of the challenges we have within our First Nations is collateral, being, we reside on Crown land, and we operate farms on farmland. I know there's, bushki happens. We have farmers come in, they lease out land. There's a lot of CP, but I don't see the past system really destroyed a lot of that industry for us, that way of life. And I see more in cattle, cow operations and horses. But I'm hoping, and I'm seeing a few new farms coming up. And sadly, I've seen some come up that gave up just because of the uh, we don't have the luxury of saying, okay, I have this collateral, this is my land, even though it is your land, right? So, uh,
Mhm.
but I think there's some upcoming farmers, especially with cannabis now. People are looking at growing hemp. Hemp is quite easy to grow, so uh, yeah, no, I'm hopeful.
Mhm. Thanks for that answer. A listener named Sarah says the work and perspectives of women are so important. Do you find that First Nations governance systems have become more patriarchal due to colonial influence? And has that influenced decision making around conservation of natural systems versus development?
Well, yeah, I think that's always been a problem. I mean, this patriarchal system, there is change. Change has been coming in terms of equality and, gender equality and, the glass ceiling per se. But uh, I think more and more, the chiefs, the governance, we have a women's commission at FSIN, right? Um, and it's a very strong table. And when it comes to serious critical issues that impact families and children, uh, they're n- I guess not, and I don't want to. Uh, they're issues I think that women bring a unique perspective. I don't want to say we're better than men. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? But
Yes.
I think we bring that unique perspective, and the matriarch system is still alive and well within many, many, many communities. So even though we're not there, we've always in the back, um, guiding and advising. But I didn't get the last part of the question.
The last part was, do you think it's um, influenced decision making around conservation of natural systems versus development?
I think so. When I've never thought of it, but now that I do think, I haven't really seen, even on the ground, any conservation officers that are women. I mean, um, and there should be. And, that is our role, especially Indigenous women, First Nations women, that is our role as we know and understand it. Um, but there again, the state Canada assuming authority and rule over everything is just, it's just not a true, and even, in terms of the Constitution of Canada, as they recognize Aboriginal title, I just don't see, uh, well, I see, a matriarchal a system at play. Um, but yeah, no, I think in terms of conservation, I think you're right. I see a lot of paternalistic attitude there, and I think that's why, it's a mess.
Mhm. Thanks for those comments. That's all the questions that we have. So we've had tons and tons of people. Oh, actually, sorry, there's one more that just came in from a listener named Heather. She would like to know if you think land guardians will become established in the prairies. Are you familiar with land guardians?
In terms of people or angels or both.
I
Okay,
think people.
land guardian.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I think we historically, First Nations, we've always had our different societies, right? And and they're mostly private and confidential, but I know even in terms of what's going on with First Nations, putting up borders and regulating, who comes into their communities, and I think, as we look to the people, I think land as well, we as First Nations, land and people, that's uh, in terms of leadership, that's what we do, protect land and people. But as we go through COVID and people going back to the land, um, whether it be hunting, fishing, whether it be tanning hides or just cultural activities, I think the conversations come up how to be good caretakers. When people are noticing, not just on the reserves, but over the barbed wire fences, our traditional territories, where we harvest. and we continue to do that. And like I say, as industry moves in, uh, and disrupts that, it really does anger people. I've sat at some very aggressive tables, and I know a lot of our First Nations are very angry with the conservation aspect that's being run by the province, right? So a lot of disrespect, some harassment, and uh, just uh, it's I think we really need to move into co-management and co-stewardship and occupy that field as First Nations, uh, if things are going to get any better.
Mhm. Thank you for that answer. So that's all the questions that we have, but there's been a number of listeners that have written in, and I just want to reiterate some of their comments here. Thank you for the great speech today. It was so enlightening, and I could listen to you speak to your experiences all day. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. Know that I'll be thinking and reflecting on what you've shared for some time. Moving words, and so happy to hear your perspective. So yes, with that, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experiences with all of us today. We had, I think, over 150 people catch our live broadcast, and I know we're all going to be going home and thinking about what you've said. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you. I
then to all of our
appreciate.
listeners, you're welcome. To all of our listeners out there, if you missed this presentation or missed part of it, you're welcome to check it on the YouTube channel. It'll be up in the near future. All of our past webinars will also be up there, and we have 3 more going on this week. So please check out the PCAP website for information about these webinars. When you leave today's webinar, a short 1-minute survey will pop up. If you don't mind, so that we really appreciate it and use the results to report back to our funders. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and hopefully I'll see more people at our next webinar tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye.